What is up? This is No House Advantage Thursday night, breaking down TNF with the big matchup here. Pete McCarthy, Geoff Ulrich with you. We got Tyler Zander producing. And yeah, Thursday night football coming off that absolute stinker last week between the Broncos and the Colts. So it's up to the Commanders and the Bears to get us excited for Thursday night football tonight, Geoff.
They're going to do it? Are they going to save the season here, save Jeff Bezos' fortune? I mean, who knows, man? Yeah, I mean, look, we got a low game total. Everyone knows what's coming out down the pipe. Carson Wentz, Justin Fields, Bears throwing like 18 times a game. And just to add to the, but I guess we call it misery. The weather looks like junk. So, I mean, it's cold. The wind might be dying down a little bit. We might avoid the showers. So something to think about there. But the field could also be a mess because
come on, you're in Canada, 45 degrees. That's nothing.
Hey, it's fine for me. I mean, I could survive there, but these football players are soft, Pete. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I guess everybody south of the border is soft when it comes to weather and stuff. What are you worried about with the field? Just Soldier Field?
Just because it's Soldier Field. It feels like anytime there's like a little bit of moisture there, it just gets chewed up. But I mean, it's not like heavy rain, but like, the winds were like around 15 miles per hour. They're slated to die down as the night goes on, though. So I don't know. It could be hit or miss with that. If we get a good weather patch, I mean, again, these defenses are bad too. I mean, that was kind of my line going into yesterday that maybe we should look at the over, but then you look at the weather and you're like, okay. But anyways, I mean, we're talking no house advantage. We need it's props. That's why we have no house advantage. So we can go to the site, we can do these props, and it just makes the game funner. So
it definitely does. And especially when there's lots of overlay, which there has typically been at No House Advantage. Keep an eye on that. Of course, give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways here on the Stokastic DFS channel. And once you do subscribe, hit that notification bell. That'll give you alerts when our shows go live. So here is how it sets up on No House Advantage tonight. You got 3 contests to choose from. $15 entry, $10K to first place, $1,600 total there, which is where it's been the last few weeks, and that has not filled, so keep an eye on it. $5 entry, $1,000 to first place. If you don't want to put in the big bucks, I guess, the $15 entry, you also have a triple up available as well. We got 20 props on the board to discuss the basics of this game. Washington is a half-point favorite, over under 38 points. So as we've talked about, not expecting a ton of offense here, and that certainly shows when you start to look at some of these props. So let's just start with the quarterbacks here, Geoff. We'll get right into it. How about Justin Fields? 165.5 passing yards on this, and it's a pretty fair prop line considering he's only been over that twice all season.
So yeah, it is interesting. Like, this is a fair prop line. His prop across the industry this week has actually gone up. Last week, one of my favorite props to bet, and if you were, if you watched the Sunday show with me and Nathan, I mean, I said, Fields it's too suppressed. Like they've gone too far on it. And at 165 was a great over last week, but around the industry, it's in the 170s. So the fact we can still get it at No House at 165, like, I know I just finished talking about the weather, but Fields had one of his best passing days of his career last week. Like, he really did, just from efficiency as well. This is a weak secondary. Like, I mean, I would watch the weather up to lock here, but like, this is a pretty strong over for me at 165. If they're going to keep putting Fields at this number, I'm over. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to bet it as a prop tonight if it's in the 170s, but on No House Advantage, we're getting a 165 number. And again, you got to look at the differences between what we're getting in No House and the other sites. And we do have this projected as an over. And, just to stay with Justin Fields, I mean, one of the strongest props we actually have here is Fields over 1 passing touchdown. Again, like, you look at the conglomeration of things. It's a low volume passing offense, but they're going to be able to move the ball as long as it's not like a monsoon or something, which I don't think it's going to be. So, you're going to get some red zone shots here. And we have that projected. We basically have Fields projected 4-1 passing touchdown. So taking the over there as well. I think that it's a really interesting way. And this is why like Noah's Advantage just as a site is really worth checking out, guys. Like every week, the lines are just a little bit different. They're not the same where, they're pushing it to one side. They make it an interesting game. And it's really interesting for game theory in their pick'em contest where, again, you're competing against other people. So.
Yeah, you want to go 7 for 7, of course, but if you could be a little sneaky, right? Maybe you take the yardage over on Justin Fields, and everybody else is thinking he's going to get that passing touchdown, and instead, he runs for 2 touchdowns, and that's the scoring for the Bears, and then they all lose that. You win on the passing yardage, and you're not going to have as many chops there at the top. Where you're talking about trying to take down these $10,000 contests here. So Justin Fields, interesting spot. As you talk about Washington's secondary, their pass defense been really bad this year, 29th in the NFL, according to, I always look at Football Outsiders DVOA. So that's the way that I'm looking at it for Washington. Chicago's defense historically has been pretty good, but this year they've really struggled with the run. I think the running backs are really interesting in this game, which we'll get to a little bit later. But looking elsewhere for Justin Fields, he is coming off a superb effort against the Minnesota Vikings, 208 passing yards last week. He had a season high 15 completions. They let him throw the ball a little bit, which is a plus. Passing touchdowns, interceptions. Let's just ask, do you have a favorite of what's on the board here for Justin Fields today?
Yeah. So for Fields, I mean, again, like just going with the projections, the over 1 passing touchdowns definitely would probably be it. Just as in terms of like sorry, I'm just looking for his. Yeah, we went over the passing yardage, and then we don't have a rushing prop for him though, do we?
No, it's strange. Right?
So again, strange, but I mean, we do have a bunch of running backs. So for me, it would really be the passing touchdown. Again, it's just a one event thing. You mentioned like it really just takes like they could go down and complete this on the first drive, and then you don't have to worry about yards or anything like that. So
True.
Yeah, it would be the passing touchdown for me for Fields to go over.
Okay. And then on the other side, we're looking at Carson Wentz. For all you had the QB controversy, right, with Ron Rivera this week, where he's trying to say, well, yeah, the QB, he's new compared to everyone else that's been in the system, but he made it sound like he's blaming the quarterback for the Commanders being 1-4 on the season. But you look at Carson Wentz from a statistical standpoint, and what we are looking at when we're playing these props, he's got over 300 passing yards in 3 out of 5 games this year. He has had at least 2 passing touchdowns in 3 out of 5 games this year. The interceptions have certainly been there as well. But, it's not as if you look and you see, oh, Justin Fields, 165.5 passing yards. It makes that Carson Wentz passing yardage number looks much higher at 250.5. Our projections don't like this number as an over, but I'm just making the case. It's not impossible for Carson Wentz to have a good game statistically and still make those back-breaking mistakes that aren't going to kill you necessarily on the props unless you're playing over on the interception number or under.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're dead on. Like the interceptions, the quarterbacks who throw interceptions, I mean, generally they end up with bigger yardage because they get the ball right back, right? So often if it's a pick 6 or something, or they turn it over in their own red zone and then the other team scores really quick. So yeah, I don't really know what to do with Wentz. Like, again, like I come back to the weather in this game and how it's going to be. I think the other thing you do have to look at is that just the pace that the Bears play at. They tend to just like they're going to bring down the yardage of all opposing quarterbacks this season. So I think that, for our props on Stokastic.com, and there's free props for No House up there, it's a strong underplay. It's 250.5. It's bigger than the books. You guys know this, watching this. It's a big number for Carson Wentz in this game. At the same time, I think that like a contrarian type of build where you take Wentz over, because as you mentioned, Pete, like he's gone over this a few times and he's throwing picks. That's good. That'll up the pace of this game on its own. So there's scenarios where I definitely see Wentz going over. I'm not going to say like this is a lock under, but we definitely have it projected as a strong underplay. And that's certainly where I would lean. But again, if you're going to play like the McLaren over, Pairing it with a Wentz over makes sense. We always look to correlate those things as well. So
there's some different ways to go. The interceptions have been there. He's thrown an interception 4 out of 5 games this year. I suppose, the thing to keep an eye on with that is that I usually look at it and say, well, I want to play for that team to lose. If I'm going over on the INT for the quarterback, because he's got to be throwing a lot, especially late in the game, where you are trying to throw it in tight windows because you have to move the football. So then, maybe you're looking at a Bears running back going over. You could be looking at, even Justin Fields, that passing touchdown as an over as well. Some other things to look at if Washington's going to be behind in this game. And we know there's no real favorite here. It's pretty much a coin flip game between these two teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like if you're taking, if you're playing like the Wentz over, if you want to get really contrarian, like you could pair like the Wentz over with like a Fields, passing under, and then maybe go to like the David Montgomery over on rushing, which we actually like. Montgomery's just like, most of the Bears props in this game are actually like really low, maybe with the exception of Darnell Mooney, who's at 50, and he's definitely got like lower props around the industry. So, but like, you pair, if you're going to go over on the Wentz props and you think he's going to throw a pick, go over on David Montgomery, because the Bears are just going to run more. Like the Bears haven't had leads much this year, but when they do, I guarantee you that they're not going to pass more. So I think that they've definitely shown us that. So there's a couple different ways to play. I will say this, probably my favorite way to go under on Wentz would be the passing touchdowns. I know like the passing yards are projected stronger for us, but when, again, like, the pace of the game, the fact that, the Commanders going up against the Bears rush defense isn't great either. So Brian Robinson could get on track in this game. It's just going to be slower pace. I think 2 passing touchdowns for Wentz is a pretty big ask here. So that's probably my favorite Wentz under if we're just being, selective here.
I think it's fair, and they're close, right? We're looking at 68% under on the passing yardage, 64% under on the passing touchdowns. So, those are very close numbers to be talking about here. And as you mentioned, these are all free. You go to stokastic.com, go to NFL, you get the pop down mention, you can go to projections, and then you get No House Advantage. Projections are simulations, and that'll give you the projections for this game. You can see them right there with the line. You can see the percentage chance that someone's going to go over or under a certain prop here. And it makes it very easy to build your lineups. And in fact, we've also built a bunch of lineups for you. You can check out the optimal lineups and scroll through and see what some of the best lineups to play are. And that's all free. You just go to Stokastic and check that out. Wide receivers, I kind of want to go relatively quickly here because I think the running backs are where we're going to make hay tonight. And you might have a different opinion, but that's what I was looking at there. But let's see the Commanders receivers. Terry McLaurin, 4.5 receptions, 65.5 receiving yards. Curtis Samuel has actually had a ton of targets, far more than McLaurin, 45 targets to 33, despite Samuel not being the guy that you think of. Also looking at 4.5 receptions, 50.5 receiving yards. That's what we're looking at for the Commanders receivers. We really like the under. The projections really like the under on McLaurin. I always get nervous with the receivers. I try to stay away from these guys as much as I can.
Yeah. And oh my God, I completely just banked on the
McLaurin.
Jahan Dotson. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what name I was thinking of there. Jahan Dotson is out. Right. So to your point about McLaurin, he's probably, his targets could easily go up in the spot where maybe he even approaches 10 targets or something if the Bears are behind. So yeah, we haven't projected for the under. The Bears secondary has also actually been improved this year. A couple of their corners playing better. So that's one I'd feel okay. Again, if you're playing for this to be like a 17-14 game, maybe you're going to take the over on Montgomery and just hammer the unders. I'd be fine with it, but yeah, this isn't one where I would be great putting it in my 7-point spot or high up. If I'm playing the pick'em contest and I'm going to mix in McLaurin, I'm going to put him lower down because even in a slower paced game, an ugly game, he could just get there, right? He's the dude who comes out, gets 8 targets, has 3 catches and 75 yards. So that's definitely something that could happen. And then on the Samuel portion, he's more interesting. I think his props are about accurate. Even on No House and around the industry, they're pretty similar. If I was going to play an over on him, it would be on the reception part though, really just being used in the short pass game. If we see poor weather, he could get there, but I'm not super bullish on him either. Like if you want to play under on Samuel, I'd be fine. I know he's looked better, but you've still got JD McKissic like working in as a receiver. Dammy Brown was in there last week. Like there's no guarantee that he's like a boatload of targets either and gets there. So again, it really just depends on how you're playing for this game. We have Samuel's projections as about neutral, not a really big lean either way, hardly a lean either way. So if you're playing for like an ugly under game, going under on Samuel's fine. I don't have a hard take on him at all.
Yeah, Samuel, he's averaged 9 targets per game, but we're looking at 5 games. Even as we're starting to get into this season, we don't have crazy sample size here, but maybe there's a connection with him and Carson Wentz, which is, if I was going to go somewhere with the receivers, I would look over on the receptions, but I didn't touch that one. Let's go to the the Bears receivers here. We got Equanimus St. Brown. I mean, this tells you where this game is. We got 2 receivers on the Bears that are on the board, and Equanimus St. Brown's looking at 1.5 receptions, 25.5 receiving yards, and then Darnell Mooney being the other. I do like the over on St. Brown with, you just have to get to 2 receptions. He's been able to get there this year. We have that as a decent over in this spot. Do you have a favorite Bears receiver spot here?
I would, yeah. I mean, St. Brown is fine to mix in. Again, it's one of those spots. It's kind of like McLaurin where I wouldn't use him high up, but using him as an over, like in your lower points, that's fine, especially if you're going to go over on Fields. I think if St. Brown catches 2 passes, he's probably getting like 25 yards, right? So to your point, I like the over on receptions a little bit better as well. But I do like Mooney better. We have Mooney projected as a slight under. His prop is a little bit bigger on No House, but I just like this matchup a lot. Like Darnell Mooney's he hasn't had the volume the last 2 weeks, but he's played well. Like he's come through with some big catches for the Bears. And this is really a spot where like the Washington secondaries, they're just really bad against outside wideouts. Like I think that Mooney could end up again, like he just sees a couple more targets here. This could turn into, instead of like 2 catches for 50 yards, we could get like 4 catches for 75 or something and a touchdown. So I like Mooney in this game. It's hard. I mean, I say that with a grain of salt. It's hard to like anybody in this game. So I probably like Mooney's upside the best of anyone not named Justin Fields. But again, like, it almost just, and again, like the more we talk about this game, and I've talked about this game too much this week already, but I still feel like the best way to play it is to maybe maybe you take the Montgomery over, maybe you take the Mooney over, but then you just play unders on everyone else. That's a fine strategy too.
Yes, just let the running backs soak it all up. And I think that can happen on both sides in this game, as we'll get into a little bit. But, I like the over on Al Michaels tonight. I think that's the one thing that I like tonight. He's going to be a little ornery after last week. I mean, he was taking shots at that game last week. He might be a lot of fun tonight on that the Amazon Prime. So the running backs, I mean, this is where I think my top 4 spots were all running backs. The running back setup here on No House Advantage is really interesting because you have situations where you have backup running backs who aren't expected to see a lot of carries tonight in the mix, right? So we're looking at, for Washington, for instance, JD McKissic didn't have a single carry last week, 15.5 rushing yards. It's not a lot, but it kind of feels like a free square. Antonio Gibson, 45.5 rushing yards. Pretty big number for him to get over. Only had 3 carries last week. Why are the carries down for those 2? Because Brian Robinson came back last week. He seemed to win the job out of preseason for Washington, was shot twice in the knee in a carjacking attempt, made his way back, 8 carries, 22 yards last week. Didn't see a ton of time, but Washington was playing from behind against Tennessee that entire game. That kind of moved him out. But we're looking at 25.5 rushing yards from Brian Robinson. And if we're going to have a grinded out kind of game against a Bears defense that has been good against the run this year, Brian Robinson over, Gibson under, McKissic under feels like a pretty easy combo to get to.
Yeah, it really does. And again, like we're talking strategy on No House, you're playing, obviously, like you're setting kind of a DFS lineup, we're using props. And it does feel like a lot of people might go there, but playing all 3 together could be unique just in itself. Not sure if people probably use 2. People will probably use the under on Gibson for sure, and probably the over on Robinson. I'm not sure if people will also add in McKissick's under. That is the one that scares me a little bit, just because I'm just coming off the Jerick McKinnon game from what was that, Sunday Night Football? I can't even remember.
Giants last year, Thursday night.
No, against the Raiders, where we had Jerick McKinnon projected as like a really strong underplay. He had like a 20-yard rushing total, and then he just, he was on the field a lot, and he ended up getting a bunch of rushes, broke some rushes. It kind of feels like that could be the same kind of thing with J.D. McKissick tonight. But I mean, again, like you said, he just doesn't get many carries. He's averaging like 2 or 3 carries a game.
He's a third down back.
Exactly. So it's hard for me to go against it. I think it's a good play. I think I don't really see any way.
He's not even an injury away, because then Gibson or Robinson would play.
Yeah,
exactly. It would have to be like a draw play on a 3rd and 16, and he picks up 16 yards and he kills you. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah. So there's a reason why it's projected so strongly. I mean, Gibson, I don't know what Antonio Gibson did in the offseason to deserve getting in this doghouse, but he ain't coming out of it anytime soon with Brian Robinson back. So I don't think there's much to think about here. You go under on the 2 and then over on Robinson.
McKissick receiving yards. See, this is a little different story here, because he is such a prolific pass catcher for them. 25.5 receiving yards. I don't have a strong play or take on this. Is that one that'll find its way on some of your boards?
Yeah, it would. I think like I mentioned, like I'm a little bit wary about Samuel in this game, just because, like McKissick is just, he's so useful in a poor weather game against, kind of what you just call Bears, weaker defensive front. I mean, I could see him getting pretty heavy usage here. So again, like Samuel, his number is basically just, we're saying it's pretty much spot on, but I'm going to lean over here. I mean, he's like, I think he's 3rd in receptions for running backs this year. He sees the field, I think, more than people realize. And I just think that it's going to be a good matchup for him. He's a really good receiver too. Like like he's a good player. He's good at what he does. So it's just not a player I like fading ever in the passing game, obviously. So his props always seem a little bit too low. I think he's probably a good over target for tonight.
Yeah, I think, if you're going to take, Robinson over rushing yards, but you're not asking for a lot. I mean, if you're imagining a game where Washington just grinds down the Bears, they don't have to throw the ball much. You can go under on Carson Wentz's passing. Then you can go under on McKissick, because he won't see the field if they're up 2 touchdowns late in this game. They're going to grind it out with Gibson and Robinson on the ground, you'd think, in that kind of situation. This is something to keep in mind if you do want to go under on the receiving yards, like what kind of game you're looking at. But if Washington's playing from behind, or they have a lot of 3rd downs, McKissick is going to be a factor in that passing game. On the other side, the Bears, it's not as clear cut, I feel like, right now with Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. Montgomery hasn't played particularly well this year. He's banged up, obviously. Last week, 12 carries, 20 yards for Montgomery. Khalil Herbert, 4 carries last week. So it wasn't much of a factor. And this is what we talked about with Washington last week. Chicago was behind almost all game against Minnesota. They grabbed that 1-point lead for a few minutes there, but they never had any offensive possessions with it. So we're looking at Herbert. I mean, this is a big number, 44.5 rushing yards. I think if you're going to go over on that, you got to feel that Herbert is supplanting David Montgomery in this game. And Montgomery, we're looking at 60.5 rushing yards. So, it seems natural to go over on one, under on the other if you're going to play that way, or just under on one of these guys.
I could even see under on both. I mean, we have a rushing quarterback to think about too, right? If the Bears also, maybe if they have a little bit of success early in the passing game against a weak passing defense, there's a lot of scenarios where I think both these guys go under. I mean, the Herbert one, like you said, just feels like you're playing for an injury. Like, I mean, it's funny, but of all the backs, we have strong unders on Gibson and McKissick, but Herbert's almost feels like a little bit safer, just because it's so big. I mean, like he could get 10 carries in this game and still easily go under. So, again, it's not projecting for us as strongly, but I think you're playing for a Montgomery injury. I just think that there's like far greater than 50% chance that he goes under than over. So I think you have to play the under there. Montgomery's interesting. Like, he's not really a player I love, to be honest. The problem with Montgomery's overs is he is like the least explosive running back in the league. He's not a bad football player, but he's not playing on behind a great offensive line either, which I feel like if Montgomery was like on San Francisco, he'd actually be a pretty good producer for fantasy, but he's not. So,
He needs the 15 carries to get the 60 plus yards.
Yeah, he at least, right? So it's really like if you're playing Montgomery over, again, like Montgomery is like the classic like linchpin for this game. If you're playing Montgomery over, you're playing for rushing. You're playing for the Bears to control this game a little bit. A slower paced game. Maybe you take like one over on the Washington side, like maybe McLaurin over because he's going to get a few more targets late in the game, you figure, but you don't go crazy. If you take the Montgomery under, though, you should be kind of thinking, okay, like he's not going to have success on the ground. So the Bears are going to be passing a little bit more. You should probably be targeting like Mooney and Fields over. So to me, like, that's why I keep coming back to his total when we're talking. I probably mentioned like 5 times for the simple fact that like you play him one way or the other, and then that really kind of should affect the rest of your lineup. If you're really trying to correlate things, you don't have to, you just throw guys in there. I mean, I do that too sometimes, but yeah, I don't hate this spot for him. He's actually a pretty strong over for us. That's the way I would lean. If you're just saying me, which way do I think he's going to go? I think he'll probably get there. He'll probably end up with like 65, which is exactly what we have him projected for. So
he's just not going to do it in one shot. So, he's going to need some opportunity. You have to.
He ran like a 4.7 out of college or something. Like he's slow. I mean, he doesn't have that high end speed, but he's good. He's a good, breaking tackles, all those metrics. He's not bad.
So that'll be the first place that you look is David Montgomery over under. You probably work off of that a little bit. It is interesting. I think if you want to try to do the game theory aspect of things and get a little different, I don't know what kind of a shootout potential we have here, but we don't have crazy numbers to get over. What would be a little different lineup that might correlate together and make some sense tonight?
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking Wentz to go over, I mean, I don't think many people are going to be going there. And then because once you take Wentz to go over, I mean, getting McKissick there is easy, like to pair him with, and probably taking like the Samuel over on receptions is also easy. So, I mean, that takes care of 3 of your plays. And then again, on the other side, I mean, if you're playing for like the whole, like the defenses are bad, the weather's not going to be that bad. I mean, like, again, we do have a low pass. This is the first thing we talk about. We do have a low passing prop on Justin Fields. So you could just get a game similar to last week, like where maybe Carson Wentz takes advantage of a weaker Bears defense. Fields comes back. I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea either. Essentially play for the same game we got last week against Minnesota, where, the receivers from Minnesota went off. Justin Fields got some yards because he had to play comeback. And actually, like, there was a lot of overs in that game. Mooney went over. I think Mooney went over. Fields definitely went over. Justin Jefferson had a monster game, and you could play. So, I mean, you could play McLaurin too. That's certainly one way this game could go. I mean, again, like bad defenses are almost trump bad offenses because there's just broken plays, and even like I said, Darnell Mooney's a really good player. He's just attached to a bad offense, but he can get broken for one play against a bad defense a lot easier. So. It's definitely a worth exploring, and I would certainly be looking to make, you have 10 lineups maybe you're entering. There's overlay on No House. I'd be looking to create at least one with a similar kind of build where you're kind of playing to a game similar to last week's Bears game.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to say, hey, Carson Wentz, Justin Fields, they're no good. I'm playing the under kind of scenario here, but the defenses aren't good either, as you talk about. And sometimes it takes a little more digging to see, especially when, you think Chase Young, you think Roquan Smith, you think of these as capable defenses. They have been over the years, but not so far this season.
That's like the one thing keeping me interested in this game too. Cause like the defensive aspect, I feel like there could be just a few crazy plays from that, but I don't know. Set yourself up for disappointment, and then you'll be moderately happy when it's like a 21-17 game. We'll all be thrilled.
Hey, it'll look great compared to last week. Maybe we'll actually get a touchdown on Thursday Night Football. So we'll take that.
Could you
imagine? Hey, give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways, and much more. And then once you do subscribe, hit that notification button. If you're not playing on No House Advantage, be sure to check it out. You can not only play the Pick'em contest as we've described here, you can also play Against the House and win up to 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. You also get a first match deposit bonus of up to $50. So if you're not playing No House Advantage, lots of overlay. Check it out. You got baseball on there today as well. This is an app you can download. You go to nohouseadvantage.com and play there as well. So be sure to check all that out. We got a ton still to come here. NFL Showdown Deeper Dive coming up at 6:30 Eastern time, as they'll be diving into this game from a DFS perspective. Geoff, always a pleasure. I'm Pete McCarthy. Everybody take care. Good luck tonight.
Have a good one, guys.